Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Tuesday, June 17th, 2008 variety of meetings. So we're going to start with the special meeting, Mr. City Clerk, and then we'll move into Housing Authority, then redevelopment, and then our joint meetings. Let's start with a roll call.
Council members: Najarian.
Here.
Montero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Yusefian.
Here.
Mayor Draymond.
Here. Could we hear the report, please?
The agenda for the June 17, 2008 special meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Thursday, June 12, 2008 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you very much. Who am I going to on this? Mr. Lansopane?
Yes, Economic Development Manager Ken Hitz will give you...
One second.
Let me just read the item into the agenda for the audience at home. Thank you. Director of Development Services, Director of Planning, Director of Public Works will be presenting the Montrose work plan to a motion directing staff on a work plan for Montrose.
Thank you, Mr. City Clerk. Sorry. Mr. Lansopane.
I will just introduce our Economic Development Manager Ken Hitz, who will present at least the articles or the items that Development Services is working on, and then I believe Mr. Loomis will talk to you a bit about those that are planning or working on.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hitz, how are you?
Doing well, sir.
Good.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, as agency members. My name is Ken Hitz, Economic Development Manager, and back in fall 2007, the City Planning Department as well as Development Services has held a number of interviews, conducted surveys, and met with members of the Montrose shopping park, and that included stakeholders as well as businesses as well as residents. Consequently, as a direct result of that, an outgrowth of these workshops, in January, the Montrose Shopping Park Association actually came before Council. They came with a number of items, and they wanted City Council to address these items. They included, one, hiring possibly a retail consultant to assist with market analysis, planning, and best practices. 2, recruit an anchor tenant for the west end of the shopping park. 3, offer a facade improvement program. 4, encourage or create incentives for business to maintain that traditional Main Street experience consistent with the district. They also asked for creation of a special sign district that could actually result in some possible vintage signage for the Montrose Shopping Park. They also asked to put together a small business task force that would implement elements of a possible work program and design and transportation plan. The last item, the Council actually adopted a resolution establishing Montrose as Glendale's official Old Town. So that has been adopted as of February 29th, 2008. We've included a number of items in your report that you have before you, along with some tasks associated with those items. That also includes time frames and estimated budgets associated with each item. As you're probably aware, the objective of this is basically position Montrose as one of the California's premier old towns, attract and retain optimal tenant mix, increase visitor foot traffic, leading to improved visibility and sales. And so we wanted to present this to you. I wanted to invite my colleague Alan Loomis up to maybe give you some possible additional background on it.
Thank you, Mr. Hitz. Mr. Loomis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the Council, I don't really have much to add on what Mr. Hitz detailed, other than to say this is the follow-through with this, as Mr. Hitz explained, this series of community planning exercises that the Planning Department, in conjunction with other departments, held over the fall of last year. And basically we're presenting the work plan that came out of that at Council direction and looking for further direction from you. So that's where we are today. Thank you.
Okay. Sure. Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Lansopane.
Mr. Mayor, just to add a note, some of the programs that we've identified here, specifically the facade improvement program, is one that we're familiar with. We have a facade improvement program for the redevelopment project areas. We have a program, or we had one, for the CDBG eligible areas. This would be a program in Montrose that would have to come from the general fund. We will look for strategies to generate that revenue if that's your direction. but wanted to make sure that you were aware this isn't eligible for redevelopment funding or CDBG funding. In terms of the traffic and the B-line, that will come with you as part of a large package that Public Works is working on now, and how we might extend some transportation up to that area.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Weaver.
Ms. Lassifane, are any of these included in the tight budget we just adopted?
I don't believe that they are.
So every one of these will come out of the reserves if we do any of them?
Well,
It's
No, it's a fair question.
a good question. Oh, yes, I was waiting for an answer, sir.
Well, I guess the answer is not necessarily. Some items could be justified in the marketing program that the redeveloped agency could carry out because the redeveloped agency's obligations and authority go beyond just the project areas, as you know. But for and some of these could be planning-based, done by staff, such as the sign program, for example. But as Phil pointed out, the facade improvement program, we need to identify a source of funds for that before you can implement that program. But there are some opportunities. For example, depending on how the Paradise Ford property is eventually utilized, that could conceivably generate a source of income that could go back into something like a facade grant program. So there are some opportunities. What Phil's pointing out is you can't depend on the redevelopment agency or CDBG, which had been the source of our other facade grants, to fund this one because it's outside the area and it's not on a qualified. It's outside the project area and it's not on a qualified area. So number 3, moving forward, in particular, would depend on our being able to identify a source of funds to support it.
In the future, okay? And the others?
Well, for instance, the attraction of an anchor to the East End, we could do that through our economic development staff. We were talking about the site at the ICSC conference. Designing a sign program, again, would be, if that is a task you put to planning, they would do that with staff. Their design studio, I imagine, although Mr. Agani can tell you if it's different. So a lot of it we could do with our staff. The V-line bus may be something where we're shifting resources, and we decide we want to have service here, and maybe we don't need it, or we can do something else over there. That is something that will come back to you as a whole plan.
Mr. City Manager.
But that is one, much like the facade grant program, that there probably are some opportunities for sources of funds to help. For example, the additional transit money that we've recently begun to pursue through the MTA under the auspices of Mr. Najarian with Burbank, that may bring some additional resources in the Glendale for public transportation, or the utilization of some of the mechanisms that we're going to be looking at in our downtown mobility plan, such as a transportation improvement district or something like that to help support improved transit. So much like the facade grant, number 7, we can certainly do a plan and identify what we'd like to have, but that's one that doesn't have a source of funding to really implement at this point.
Mr. Mayor, just
Yes,
follow up that. I'm more concerned, and I can hear what you're going to do in the future, but for the coming budget year, which of these is going to have to come out of reserves?
Well, let me jump in for a minute to answer part, because some of these are not, don't require any appropriation of funds.
Understood.
You know, actually, most of them.
I just want to ask which ones do.
I think the question is really which ones do. For example, create a sign district. That's something that's in our books. It exists already. Any area can do that.
Impacting general fund.
Another example, create a small business task force. Well, that's already underway.
Right.
That does not,
Same with attracting an anchor. We're working on that now.
Exactly. We are already working on that. For example...
Retail consultant?
Yeah, that's a different one. And I think we're going to probably hear from some speakers as to whether or not there's even a desire to have that. But provide incentives to restore building facades to a more historic look. I think these are areas that are going to require more discussion and more investigation before there is even a discussion of
I'm just looking at the comparative table that we got in here.
Mr. Yusefian.
I want to thank the staff for their report. I think it's a very good staff report. I understand this is what you want to know what you're doing. I have a couple of issues. On number 1, I would say no to hire a broker or participate in making a deal negotiation outlined or so. I don't think we should hire a broker to do what property owners deal with. So that's one thing. That's your number one, the last item on the bottom. As far as the rest of the items are, I'm comfortable with the rest with the exception of number 3, and the issue with number 3, in my opinion, is the lack of $425,000 that is required over the next 10 years. So doesn't mean that we can't figure out other ways somewhere down the line. This is a very comprehensive plan. It will take many, many years to accomplish it. So none of this is going to be done overnight. So while it's a good idea to put all this stuff in here, we can start the ball rolling with some of the other items as I think some of my colleagues and also Jim said, which is the planning can deal with some of the sign ordinance issues, what you want to allow, blade signs, so on and so forth, design issues. You were there in ICSC with me, and we met many people who were looking for site, and there it is. All we have to do is go through our Rolodex and call those people and say, come on down, let's talk. So it doesn't take a lot of money for do this. But even just to do something there on that location, that will take at least 3-4 years just to accomplish. Things don't happen overnight. So I am very happy and encouraged by what the staff has put together. I would like to go forward with number 7, which is the transportation plan. I guess Public Works, Scott, I don't see Mr. Zern here. Well, there he is.
Ask Mr. Yusefian, before we give direction, I'd like to hear from the public, because they may say something that
I'm almost done, Mr. Mayor. Number 7 is, and that's the last item I have to say, all you need to do is just include this and it will cost only $5,000. Is that an accurate number, Mr. Zern?
Mr. Mayor, members of the
the
council,
study is $5,000. Buying the trolleys is going to cost more.
we are proposing a line-by-line analysis in coordination with the mobility plan. It costs approximately $100,000. What we're saying is $5,000 extra to look at this specific corridor.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'm done.
Okay. If there is nothing else, I'd like to hear from our speakers before we start giving our direction as to what it is we'd like to see happen here, if you don't mind. Do you have anything else to add, Ken, before we go to the public? No. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hitz. All right. Let's see. We have 4 speakers. Let's hear from Barry Allen, followed by Mike Mohill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, staff, and of course the public. I'm Barry Allen. There are 2 things. One, I was asked to read something that was given to me by someone who couldn't be here today, and then there were a couple other questions that I would ask on my own behalf. This is a quote. "I always felt the boundaries of the shopping park do more to divide the local business community than to bring it together to work for the common good. Most Montrose business owners I've known breathe a sigh of relief if their location falls outside of the MSP. I'll bet most current MSPA members feel the same way and would love to be able to opt out of a group that requires its members to pay special taxes, do extra accounting paperwork, and others so little in return. Also, it seemed to me that the special events and promotions do more to benefit the foothill communities in general and almost nothing to benefit the brick-and-mortar businesses that make up the BID and pay the extra MSP tax to the city each year. At least that was our impression after the better part of 2 decades in the same location. Maybe it's time to scrap the BID as a failed relic of years gone by and let all area businesses exist and compete on their own terms without the fiction of an association that may exist only to benefit the city of Glendale. And just in case Dave Weaver wants to put in his 2 cents, it might be worthwhile to remind him that his support for Montrose businesses includes his no vote against the plan to repair our worn-out sidewalks a couple of years ago. We remember his miserly disapproval of much-needed infrastructure repairs in Montrose. The questions that I have have to do with the trolley, if that trolley is going to ultimately connect the downtown of Glendale with the Montrose, I think it's a great idea. If it's just to run up and down on Honolulu, what happened to old good shoe leather? And also, does this plan have any impact on the Rockhaven property? And if that is going to fit into this whole plan, this whole district, and by the way, that Rockhaven could become a really great North Glendale government center. Barry Allen, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Let's see. Next speaker is Mike Mohill, followed by Leslie Sauer, followed by Herbert Milano.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Mike Mohill. I wasn't planning to come here this afternoon. As you know, I always come at night, but Mr. Barry Allen got me on the phone and said, come on down here. I said, I want to go take a nap. He says, no, they're going to talk about the Montrose Park. And I said, oh, no, they already took my money already. So I'd like to make a couple comments about the Montrose Shopping Center. I live up of East Glen Oaks Canyon, and my wife and I go back and forth about the Montrose Park and the Americana. As you know, I'm a big promoter of the Americana. My wife said it's a nice place. She loves Montrose. She'd rather go eat in Montrose. She says, I like the small town feeling of Montrose. That's the big thing. Small town of Montrose. When I heard about bringing in, quote, an anchor store of some nature, well, either you're small town or you're big town trying to be big town. Either you fish or foul. Make up your mind. Again, my wife likes the small town feeling. It's okay with me. So now you're talking about I heard Barry said bringing in a trolley. I said, oh my God. You know, I love the Americana, and I like the trolley. It's a great novelty. But to bring the same trolley up to Montrose idea is like saying, what makes the Americana special? It's no more special anymore. It's like saying there's Starbucks here, and there's Starbucks there, and there's Starbucks there. Or there's a Cheesecake Factory here, and the Cheesecake Factory here. When Cheesecake Factory was first around here in Beverly Hills, I made a special trip to Beverly Hills. Now, it's Glendale also. Big deal. Cheesecake Factory's in Glendale. So let's think twice before we start changing things up in Montrose. It's a nice little community. You've already spent the people's money for the Rockhaven project, $9 million. So how much more do the taxpayers have to spend up in Montrose? $9 million is a big chunk. Why can't you make the Rockhaven property something special that people who will want to go up to Montrose, visit the Rockhaven property, spend the day there, and go shopping in Montrose, on Honolulu, without spending another $100 million to spruce up Montrose. Keep it quaint. No, we don't need Macy's up there. We don't need Trader Joe, although Trader Joe's kind of a nice store, but, you know, another Trader Joe. There's one restaurant in Glendale that I love, and I'm not even Armenian. It's called Raffi's. That's my favorite restaurant. So is Foxy's. And neither one of those places are chain stores, and people make special efforts to go there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mohill. Leslie Sauer, followed by Herbert Milano.
Thank you, Council. I'm Leslie Sauer, and I'm a business owner in Montrose. I have a business that's actually in the West End District, and I'm here because this proposal would significantly affect my business, and I wanted to be a part of this. I wanted to be a part of the decision-making as a public, citizen of Glendale, and also and a resident, and also as a business owner. There's a couple things on the number 1 and number 2 that I wanted to bring up. For number one, for the consultant, I think it's great to have a consultant. I just wonder if all of the businesses who put in the money for the bid assessment, if that's part of something that they're supposed to pay for, if it's, for their businesses, for one. I'm not sure all about what the city pays for and what it doesn't. I do know that, Montrose gets a lot of attention, and we're very thankful for it. It's a great little community, and we love it there, and thank you for that. I would like to ask that any consulting include all of the rest of us. I'm about 5 feet from the Montrose Shopping Park. Literally, just walk a couple feet, and that's my building. And my building touches parking lot 8, which is the West End anchor that you guys or everyone's talking about. And I would like to be included in that discussion, because the construction that's going to come up, I'd like to know what type of building is being, talked about. What type of business, what type of zoning, would there be any changes to the present zoning? Will there be any environmental impact? What about the parking and the square footage ratio for the parking? It's already, that lot 8 was, I believe, in the past bought from the Paradise Ford lot was bought for the Montrose Shopping Park to have the extra parking, and then paved into a parking lot. And I could be wrong. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to understand this better. And then yet they're not. It's not part of the district of the shopping park. It's right where my customers can't come in if that's going to be another big large building. And then I really want to make a point about Trader Joe's and any other food market, because just like with the Harvest Market, people go shopping and then they leave. They go with their fresh foods and go put it back in their fridge. They're not going to go shopping. We keep our businesses closed on Sunday because the Harvest Market covers us all up. I'm surprised that the Trader Joe's is an option, because why would they come and go shopping, and browse and go to lunch if they're going food shopping? So I hope that that's going to be talked about. Jurisdiction, it's, also outside of the shopping district, so I wonder why it is that mostly the Montrose Shopping Park gets to decide all of these things when it's a whole Montrose. Montrose is the city, and all of the other businesses that own, and the residents, we're all part of it. And so I'd like to be included. I think that's very important that Montrose gets the attention from the Montrose businesses, not just the shopping park, which is a great, organization and everything, and they bring a lot of great things to the area. But we don't want to be left out. And also, one last thing is I have a question about the Old Town status from, is that for Montrose, or is that the shopping park that gets the official Old Town status from Glendale?
I have a question.
Thank you very much.
Well, let's finish our speakers, and then we'll address all of this. So don't go away. Okay. Mr. Milano.
Good afternoon. My name is Herbert Milano, members of the City Council and the Redevelopment Agency and staff. For a long time, I've been looking at the different initiatives that the city has taken with regard to economic development, or at least those things that fall under the purview of economic development and incentives. And I've always asked myself, how do you measure the results or the outcomes of all of these different initiatives? And I think it's a cultural and a very pervasive way in which the city does business. There's all kinds of initiatives, but what are the actual outcomes and how do you measure them? I am assuming that the outcome for many of these initiatives is an increased sales tax base at its most basic. And so if you are going to bring a retail consultant, then what are the expectations with regard to the outcomes of increased sales taxes as a result of this? Because if you do have an outcome, then you have a justification for hiring that person to say, it's like a commission. This is what we're expecting the sales increases to be out of that particular advice. If you take a look at the transportation improvement and the mobility study, well, I'm assuming that the outcome of the mobility study was improved mobility in the center core. So where are the measurements? It's been over about a year. How are we measuring that, let's say every 3 months or every 6 months? How is traffic flow being measured in a way that we know that it is taking effect and that the initiatives are having results? And I would apply the same things to many of the other suggestions that you have. How do you translate that initiative into outcomes? Because I believe that once we start asking for the effectiveness of these programs, we probably would have fewer of these programs, and the ones that we do are probably going to be held to some type of higher standard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. Okay, that brings us to the conclusion of our speaker cards. Let's go to my council colleagues. Mr. Quintero.
I have a question for the speaker. I'm just curious what type of business you have in the Montrose area, ma'am.
Is this sour?
It's Aqua Artists.
Aqua Artists? Okay. Oh, that's okay. Mr. Draymond gave me the answer. Thank you.
What was it?
Aqua Artists.
Aqua Artists? Oh, they take care of my pool.
Here you go.
Hi.
All right. Anyone else? Mr.
I have some questions. Mr. Hitz, would you read the mission statement? I'm not sure you called it a mission statement, but what was the goal when you first got up? Something about the premier Old Town.
Right.
Could you repeat that and tell me what that was?
Sure.
Was that a mission statement or a goal or?
More or less. Basically, it would include increasing foot traffic, obtaining the optimal tenant mix, retaining the optimal tenant mix, certainly increasing the mom-and-pop experience, decreasing retail leakage. These are all items that could be possibly measured.
Okay. Thank you. I'm really torn as I think about Montrose and what I want it to become. Obviously, we want success for the shopping park as a whole. We want success for the business owners individually. But the problem is, I think we ran into it perhaps a year ago, is that the perceived success of the shopping park and the perceived success or the actual success of the businesses as perceived by the landlords oftentimes leads them to increase the rates, rental rates. And as a result, and we saw the difficulties with Once Upon a Time and the displeasure that the community had with their being forced to relocate due to quite an increase in rents. So we're sort of, we want success, but too much success, I think, could lead to a change of the makeup of the type of stores, like the mom and pops that you're talking about. So promoting success, I think, may be detrimental to the viability of the mom and pops. So before I go anywhere and say, let's hire the retail consultant or do all these other things, I need to get a better understanding about how far we can go before it's too late. We heard we don't want, there's not a great demand for the national chains, the Starbucks, the Pinkberries, etc. But where can we go? And isn't there a certain level of success that we can achieve by retaining generally the mom and pop type of makeup of the owners? At some point, don't we cross that point of no return where you're going to start to be attracting these larger retailers who are willing to pay the extra rent, and the landlords, certainly, assuming they're driven by profit motive, will gladly, unless they're have some other gratuitous incentives, will gladly take that higher rent and displace the mom and pop and bring in name the store, the sharper image, or these other things. So before we start going what we generally think is good for a business park, and that's increased sales tax, Mr. Milano mentioned it, and Mr. Mohill was sort of, I think, along the same lines there. Let's just be careful and let's make sure that we don't overheat the market and do something, have unintended consequences in an attempt to make things better for the existing merchants there. So that's just, I'm sort of laying off at the moment. I need to have a better understanding and maybe look forward and play this out to make sure that we don't make decisions that will, in the end, harm the type of businesses and the type of quaint nature that we're obviously trying to protect. Thank you, sir.
Let me go to Mr. Weaver, since you've already asked a question, Mr. Quintero.
Oh, sit down, Jeff. And I'm okay on everything except the consultant at this time. So I asked the question, we have to start digging into the reserves. What happens in the future years is fine. You know, that's one of my favorite places in Glendale. Just to clarify, distortions made by Mr. Alan Barry Silverman, I was vice president of the Montrose Chamber of Commerce. For years. I attended the merchant meetings for years up there. I worked every single Montrose event for years. I love that area. In fact, that's where I took our city manager when he first became the city manager, to show him an area of Glendale that people didn't know about if you only lived down here. And I still like to be up there. And the distortion that Mr. Silverman made is that I challenge anybody to listen to the videotape, watch the videotape of what I said about the improvements in Montrose. I never, ever was against those improvements. Listen to what I said. Sales tax generated up there is small, and we're never going to do enough up there to generate any sizable increase in revenue to the city of Glendale. This community, we do things for this community at times that are for the good of the community without looking at the outcome of revenue sources to the city. Helping Montrose be better, to get the perfect fit, to maintain the character is one thing. If we go into it with the opinion we're trying to generate revenue, I think that's the wrong approach for Montrose. It's small business. We want to keep the character of it. And the ways we keep the character of it up there can come out of some of this investigative work that we're talking about doing. I don't mind staff at all going ahead and looking at everything they can. I'll reserve my comments for a consultant in the future when and if we find there's a definite need to bring somebody like that on. The limits on the Montrose Shopping Park District, I don't know, Mr. Draymond probably can address that better, whether you expand it to include aqua artists and other things. But this council is aware of the 3 blocks there, the parking needs, the expansions. We're all aware of it and what can be done there. I'm just glad with Mr. Draymond on here now, Montrose is getting a lot more exposure than they ever did, which is a great positive for this city. So I think that sums it up for me this time.
Okay, Mr. Quintero.
I'm a big believer in the ability of small business and retail merchants to innovate, to transform themselves, and so whatever we do in Montrose, I want to continue to encourage small business people to go about their business with a minimum amount of interference from the city or the staff. And I think this report helps to move us in that direction. I also don't think that hiring a retail consultant to conduct market analysis, I don't think there's any need for that, maybe sometime in the future. But recruiting a significant retail anchor for the West End, I think, is very important. Hopefully it'll be a high-end sort of gourmet market. The parking, whatever type of market we recruit for that end of the shopping center, it will include public parking, so we don't have to worry, and the merchants at the west end of Montrose don't have to worry that somehow their parking is going to be taken away. So I do think that's a good idea, and we continue to try to do that. The facade improvements, I think, are also a good idea, and we can work on that in the future so that individual business people and the property owners can at times do a facade improvement and receive an incentive and get some assistance from development services. And I do like the overall idea of maintaining a kind of historic look. I think that makes sense. The sign district also makes sense. I think that's a good way to have some of the businesses pop out as you drive by, and so forth. The Small Business Task Force has already sort of begun, so I think we need to continue to work on that. Then in terms of a trolley line, we need to quit using the term trolley line. Trolley line to me, and I think to the general public, means a rails in the city. That's not what we're talking about, at least I'm not. I think we're talking about a shuttle. Soft-wheeled, natural gas, easy on and off, easy signage, but a shuttle is what we're talking about for the Montrose area and the surrounding community, and that's also what we're talking about downtown. So I don't think there's any interest, or the cost would be prohibitive in terms of an actual trolley line. But I think in the future, that's the best way to go. And then on a personal note, let me just say, I mention it all the time. Whenever I have people from out of town, whether they're from California or out of state, especially my relatives, I show them all the sites here in Southern California, and it's just amazing to me how many of my relatives and friends always love Montrose the best. As a matter of fact, the last time around, as I was doing my tour guide, comparing Old Town Pasadena to Montrose, they absolutely like Montrose a lot more. Why? Because of the individual shops and the individual restaurants. In Old Town at this point, you have chain after chain. They may have nice historic facades, and it's a very nice place to hang out, but in fact, Montrose appealed to them a lot more. And these were a couple of people in their late 30s. And so anyway, that's what we have to continue to encourage, just to have Montrose sort of remain what it is, but do everything that we can to encourage those small businesses. They know what they need. They know what they want for the most part. And so I think we're in good shape. Montrose has certainly come a long way in the past few years, and I continue to feel we have nothing but blue skies ahead of us. So I was there as recently as Saturday. I rode through at a low rate of speed, and it was on my motorcycle. And it was just great. I mean, the restaurants were packed. There was all kinds of activity on the street, and just looked like a wonderful place to be. So anyway, I want to thank the staff. I think they did a good job of sort of crystallizing what the options are.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Yusefian.
Well, I have a different point of view. I think hiring a consultant is an important part. Restaurants are full. You drive by, they're full. Beauty salons, they're full. They have their old customers. Drive by, walk. Get off the car. Walk the neighborhood. Go to some of those stores. They'll be happy to see you. There aren't too many customers that are going there. We, in general, we all like the quaintness of it. We love it. But how many of you do actually shop there? You actually buy things? 2, 3. Just in this room. 3. We talk a big talk, but when it comes down to actually departing with our cash, really don't do it. We buy a few tchotchkes here and there. Businesses cannot survive on those. That's what happens. So I think a consultant is important, because the consultant is not hired just to let them know what the newfangled store is going to be. The consultant needs to work with all of them to let them know what their demographic is that they're serving. How could they increase the people that they're serving? What other demographics they can attach to? And these are the type of things that no business owner is going to know. I'm not going to know, and no one on this dais is going to know. Let me tell you, Mr. Draymond has been in that shopping center for a long time. His parents have been there for a long time. But I will go as far as to say is even he is not an expert like what a consultant will be. Is having a supermarket on that corner the right thing? I don't know. Some people say it is. She says it's not. I don't know. Would there be a combination of a restaurant and maybe a supermarket, or maybe some housing, or maybe some retail shop? I don't know what needs to be there. And that is a city, we bought that not for parking lot. Originally, that site was purchased so we could either move the fire station there or the library there. That's what we bought it for. It was a good price. The Ford was going out of business, For what we paid for that, it was a blessing in disguise. We bought that. But, I don't know what we need to do. I need to have somebody tell me what is the right thing to do there. Now, the question is going to be, how do you pay the $60,000? Is that something that the redevelopment agency can pay as part of the economic development?
It'd be outside the project area. It'd be very difficult to make that finding.
So it has to come from general fund?
Well, or redevelopment agency monies that are not tax increment.
Right.
And there might be something there, a lease payment or something that could be used, but you couldn't use tax increment for it.
Okay. So long as it's not a tax increment money?
As long as it's not tax increment. Some other, like a lease revenue possibly, or anything that is not connected to TI, you probably could use, otherwise you couldn't.
Okay. And do we have this type of instrument?
We have some of that revenue that is committed to your economic development program, to some other things we do outside the project area, marketing and things like that.
Okay. Well, to Mr. Milano's question, that what is the purpose of this? And I tend to agree with what Mr. Weaver said earlier, which is, I guess I'm glad I'm not the only one who has their phone on. Montrose is not a great revenue generator. So the reason we're doing this is not so we can increase the tax dollars. In my opinion, Montrose is one of those amenities that cities need. It's a nice area, and we need to make sure it's successful, because we all use it. Whether we buy tchotchkes or not, we go there, we enjoy it, we love it. It's no different than what happens to Kennett Village, maybe 1/10 of Montrose Shopping Park size, but previous councils put a lot of money there to improve the area. We did the same thing with Adams Hill. I mean, if you take the amount of money they generate is a drop compared to what Montrose Shopping Park generates. So sometimes it's not all about the money. It is for the health of the city as a whole. And that's what I am interested in, making sure that the health of that shopping center, not just the shopping center, as the young lady said, the area, because it's not just the shopping park. The whole area needs to benefit from what we're about to do. Because if it's not healthy, all those nice shops that we like to go see, they're going to be gone. They're going to be gone. I don't care what the rent is. If the rent is even 50 cents a square foot, if nobody goes shopping there or nobody's buying what they're selling, they're going to be gone. And the market will dictate. My point of view is hire a consulting to tell you where the market is going, so you are ahead of the curve. So those mom and pops can make the right decisions, can get the right merchandise, can go and access more of what's around them to make sure that they're healthy. That's what I think we should do.
Okay. Let me make a couple of comments and try to answer some of the questions also. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Quintero, you have a question.
Well, I just wanted to clarify, when I voted to buy that Ford lot, I didn't vote because I was interested in putting a library there, a fire station there. I voted because it was a possibility for more parking and maybe even some green space, and hopefully in the future some type of commercial. So that's why I voted for that purchase. I think it was a great idea, and I think it's going to really help, especially the the west end of the shopping park.
Okay. First of all, one of the issues that keeps coming up is the measured results. There's Mr. Milano. The measured results issue related to how much at least on the level of how much revenue is generated versus investment in the area. The whole purpose of a BID was the state of California's answer to that very question. Montrose was the 5th BID in the nation that was formed. California's 1965, I think it was 1965 business improvement law, and Glendale formed its first BID in 1968. It's pretty fast. So it predates many in the country. The whole idea, and the reason it's found in the State Streets and Highways Code, is that the state legislature believed that areas, neighborhood business districts, and that's what Montrose actually is by definition. That's the term of the art. Neighborhood business district was imperiled. They believed that these districts, like Kenneth Village, like Adams Square, like Montrose, that are all over the state, were economically imperiled because of the looming advancement of big malls and so on, and the way people were relocating themselves within cities. They understood quite clearly that they would not be able to compete with major malls and flagship stores and so on. So they created this concept of the BID so that businesses like this could self-assess if they voted to do so, and could help to pick up some of the slack that a municipality either couldn't or wouldn't generate for them. And so that's what the Montrose Shopping Park Association is. That's what they do. They self-assess. Sometimes we debate here about, gee, should Glendale have business license taxes? Well, that's technically exactly what the Montrose Shopping Park has. As a matter of fact, if you look at the ordinance, it specifically defines the assessment as a business license tax, and a special business license tax. And the point is, they use those funds, plus their own fundraising, to promote the merchandising activities within the boundaries of the district, to create certain physical improvements, such as the town clock and other physical improvements there, to do a certain amount of public outreach and advocacy, community advocacy. And this city, and to answer one of Ms. Sauer's questions, why the Shopping Park Association? Because the city of Glendale contracts with the MSPA so that the MSPA acts not just as a representative of the merchants for themselves, but also they are the advisory board for the BID. And so they function in that role as well. This falls under the category of how they function as an advisory board. So to answer your question, Mr. Yusefian, and yours, Mr. Weaver, your comments about, will the revenues there ever really keep pace with the amount of money we invest now, in the past, or in the future? The answer is probably never. Probably never. That's exactly what the state legislature understood, and that's exactly why they created the BIDs. Let's see here. I want to talk about the survey. The survey concept has already been done in Montrose twice. In the last 15 to 20 years, the MSPA has paid for 2 surveys with outside consultants. One was 15 years ago, and the surprising answer was you need a retail anchor at the west end of the shopping park. Then about 5 years later, time went by, and they said, well, maybe we should do another survey. And then, big surprise, yet a second group came in and said, you need a retail anchor on the west end of the shopping park. It's no secret. It's no secret. The 2400 block is almost exclusively service businesses. And I won't go too deeply into it, but part of the science of a neighborhood business district is how one store spins off business to the next, foot traffic to the next. That's why the tenant use, the mix of use is critical to the survival of these districts. When you get a section of town that is, in the case of 2400 block, and the last time that I was checking on it was a while ago, but it was about 60% service businesses. They do not tend to spin retail business off, because if you think about how you shop, if you run into a dry cleaners, you go in, you pick up the dry cleaning, and you go. If you go in and have your shoes repaired, you pick them up and you leave. So And some of the service businesses that you mentioned, Mr. Yusefian, you're quite right. You go into a hair salon, you may stop afterward and have a bite to eat, but probably not. You're going to hurry home, or let's say a tanning salon. Someone goes in there, they come out of there, they're not going to go into a restaurant, probably. They're going to go home and towel off or something. So the mix of use is extremely important. I don't support hiring another retail consultant. Folks, I would say whatever money you were or might spend there, spend it on some areas of the city. If you want to spend it on small retail business that have a hard-to-solve conundrum. This is not one of those. And you're also right, Mr. Yusefian, I don't know everything about it up there. I only know the answer to this one because we've done 2 surveys before. However, it's pretty clear what the issue is there, and the reason no retail anchor has ever been created down there is very obvious. The existing buildings are too small. And to answer Mr. Mohill, thank you for the intelligent question. It is a very intelligent question. No one is suggesting that it be a big box store, a Macy's or anything like that. Retail anchor doesn't have to be a national chain. It's just it needs a retail pull to that end of the town. It's like a human being with only a left arm. You need a right arm to operate more efficiently. And that's what the shopping park has been missing for years. The BID assessment, to answer some other questions, I just absolutely reject the comments of the speaker completely. This is just, in my view, absolute nonsense. The stores that are not open on Sunday are not open on Sunday because traditional service businesses don't open on Sunday. And she mentions the harvest market. The measured results, and it ties to your question, Mr. Milano, the measured results you're looking for is that about 6.5 years ago, there were 18 enormous empty storefronts in 3 blocks of Honolulu Avenue. Street lighting was put in, pedestrian lighting, which did not exist before. Sidewalks were replaced. The harvest market was put in place as a Sunday function. Now we are landscaping too, but now the district, even with the problems of rents going up and down, is at about 99% occupancy. Those are pretty good numbers. So that's an indication to me that the city was moving in the right direction. How that translates into specifically increased tax revenues, I don't know. I don't have the figures to answer your question. But I can tell you that on the first floor businesses, in other words, retail, service, and restaurant, it is near full capacity, near full occupancy. There are now approximately 45 businesses open. There are 213 businesses within the boundaries of the BID. Okay. That's why, by the way, the BID functions only for the BID. It has boundaries to it, and the boundaries have been drawn in conjunction with the city and the stores themselves. The issue of 45 businesses that are now open on Sundays prior to the inception of the harvest market, there were about a dozen. That's it. So you ask the businesses there that aren't service businesses, you ask the businesses, the retail stores in the 2200 block where that event takes place, and they'll tell you that it has turned Sunday into an extra Friday or Saturday for them. Their sales are up 30% on average there. The traffic flow issue and trolley, would I love to see that someday? Yeah, for a whole bunch of reasons. Not just because the beeline that exists there doesn't take people where they need to go. That area has a large senior community, large senior population, and mostly lives on the west end, that are in senior housing on the west end of Honolulu Avenue. There is no public transit that takes them to the hospital that's there, Verdugo Hills Hospital, or the only major 24-hour pharmacy we have there, or the only medical center they have up there. the number 3 line used to, but the route was changed and it no longer goes there. We also have a big cultural venue up there in the city of La Cañada Flint Ridge. It's called Descanso Gardens. There is no public transit that gets you from Montrose to there. We also have the Spar Heights Merchants Association Business District. That is not a part of the Shopping Park Association. They have no municipal lots. And one of the speakers raised the issue of the municipal lots. A trolley would help facilitate growth of business in Spar Heights because most traditional retail won't invest money to open a store where there's no parking. And since the city of Glendale has made it clear they're not going to build a surface lot down there, and there just isn't a property down there to use, the only way you're going to encourage growth of business there is if you have a dependable shuttle or trolley or something so they can use the municipal lots that more or less run along Honolulu Avenue. The reason the municipal lots are not part of the BID is because parking lots are not part of it's a tenant-based BID, not a property-based BID, a tenant-based BID. And so the boundaries were drawn specifically excluding the municipal lots. They are the province of the city of Glendale. Mr. Quintero already touched on the subject of would you lose the public parking component if that lot were developed, that number 8 lot. And as far as I'm concerned, the answer is no. I don't know how it will ultimately work out, but I think clearly the message is that whatever happens there, it has to include some accommodation for the parking you're losing. Let's see. No, let me come specifically to, by the numbers, what is here on our report. My view is with number 1, I would not hire a retail consultant. It's just a different point of view from my colleague on the end of the dais on my right. I understand what he's saying. It's just a difference of opinion.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
From you? You said you did this 5 years ago?
They did it 15 years ago and then 10 years ago.
Do you have that report? Can that report be given to staff?
I'm looking in the back because the president of the association is back there, although he didn't turn in a speaker card, Dale Dawson, but we can look.
He's just smiling. He's not saying anything.
See. Let me get through my list here. Number 2 is recruit a significant anchor. That's already in process. Number 3, offer a facade improvement program. Yeah, I would like to see that at some point. What I like about it is the idea that it's a historic look rather than creating a historic district out of the place. It leaves more room for interplay between the property owners who may not want a historic district there and the tenants. Remember that the storefronts there, and I'm not sure you all realize this, the average storefront in Montrose is 20 feet wide. They're very old storefronts. Some of them have been combined together, like Mr. Dawson's store, which is considered one of the wide stores, and it's 2 storefronts, so it's about 40, 50 feet wide. A facade improvement upgrade for a 20-foot wide storefront that was originally made to be stucco and tile is not such a big deal. Right now, my view is the city can't afford to do it. That's my view. Would I like to see it? Absolutely. I think the city should try to encourage it, but it's not in our budget, so I think goes on the wish list from my view. Number 3 is that was number 3. Number 4 is to encourage or create incentives for businesses to maintain the traditional Main Street experience. I think that is a fine idea, and I think we need to do that through some of the things the city's already done. It brought back the 1924 street lights by having reproductions made from the original molds that the original manufacturer had. They have improved the sidewalks. They took the landscaping design back to the original concept when the shopping park was created. The maintenance of the existing trees and so on. The $15,000 that redevelopment gives to each of the business associations, including Montrose, is one way the city helps to do that. The shopping park uses some of those funds to do the Christmas decorations and so on. those are all ways that you help business maintain a traditional Main Street experience, but also by just taking the pulse of the town from time to time. And this council has done that several times in the last couple of years. Number 5 is create a sign district. Well, we don't have to create special ordinances for that. It already exists. I mean, the ability to do that already exists. I think what the shopping park needs is for the city to simply help them go through the process. The sign, blade signs, vintage signs, animated neon signs that all used to exist in the district will help to also bring back a sense of nostalgia. The MSPA already has the option of working on that, but I think they need the help as to discover how to do it. And then number 6 is initiate small business task force. Has already been initiated, and I think the second meeting is
July 16th.
July 16th. Number 7 is the enhanced transportation plan. I would very much like to see, and I disagree with my colleague, Mr. Quintero, just a little bit. No, it does need to be a trolley, but you're right, not an in-ground trolley, a rubber-tired trolley, and the type that has been looked at has been the reproductions of the vintage trolley that used to run there. The Montrose Glendale Railway was a trolley line that used to run there, and it is mostly to provide. The idea would be mostly to provide the kind of inter-area transit that I was talking about. So it would help business grow in Spar Heights District. It would help people move through the corridor that really isn't served by the B line right now, or maybe in place of the B line there. I don't know. But again, it's a cost that there's no money for that right now. So short of some donor stepping up, writing a check, I don't see that happening right now. But I'd sure like to see it on a future list of improvements up there. And then the last one is create a solution establishing, well, that one's already occurred, and I think the answer is the Glendale's official Old Town. Yes, the thought was the Montrose Shopping Park. However, the language is not limited to that. So you never know how that may grow. The BID boundaries were expanded once in the late 80s, and who knows, that may happen again someday, which would mean, Ms. Sauer, that if they expanded 1 foot, perhaps, west, they'd land you there as well. So in any case, those are that's my input. No to a change in zoning. I do not see that as a necessity or anything of benefit to the property owners there. And the economy seems to have taken care of the proposed $3.50 a foot rentals. The economy seems to have handled that pretty well, and when the rents came down, the stores filled up. So, Mr. Weaver.
Well, we're supposed to be giving direction staff today.
Yep.
And whenever you want, I'll make a motion to give direction staff exactly what you said, because I agree with everything you said, down to the last letter.
Well,
if you'd like a motion now,
can we entertain a motion now?
I have one question
Mr.
from you.
Has a question.
That's actually, you just said that the boundaries can be expanded. Who initiates those expansions?
The request comes from the BID.
Oh, the guy back there.
That guy back there right now.
So the BID is what the request is to expand it?
They would bring the request. The city would then work with them to go through the process of talking to store owners in the proposed expansion area. They would have to vote to be included, because it means they would become part of the self-assessed district.
So it's not from outside, so somebody else can't come in and say, look, I would like to be a part of the association.
They could, but it's generally not store by store. It's because right now, any store can become an associate member of
Right, but to be a part of the BID.
Yeah, to extend the boundaries, that would have to happen in cooperation with the city.
I did not get, actually, no one's comment on this item number 1, which says hire a broker to participate in marketing and deal negotiation and advice on tasks outlined in the other categories.
And my view was no to what is included in number 1.
Okay.
So,
You don't want to hire a broker?
no.
Okay, so because that was the separate item
I see
from
what
the
you're saying.
consultant. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Which I concur, by the way.
Mr. Mayor, I will make that motion.
Second.
Motion is second. Mr. Kasakian.
Council members Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian,
Aye.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
one comment before. I know it's probably all known by you and maybe somewhat implied in your comments, but I would like to say, while Montrose is, relatively speaking, a small generator of tax, the impact on the economy by all the jobs that are there and the 213 businesses is significant. And I know there's at least two business owners in here in the crowd, in the audience, that it is important. So it's not just the sales tax that's being generated by those businesses, but the jobs that they're providing, because then they're spending in the local economy. Wanted to make sure that at least our two owners understood that we all know that, and wanted to make sure it didn't go without saying.
I think we know about Montrose Travel for sure.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. There's, last survey was approximately 1,000 employees, whether full-time or part-time, in that district. Those are a lot of folks that are bringing money home. Not only that, but part of the notion of the business improvement law is that these neighborhood business districts are not just imperiled, they're also economically key to the economic stability of neighborhoods, the neighborhoods that they touch. So that goes away, and this city is going to be spending some revenues anyway to pick up the slack of what the BID is doing right now. Okay.
Do you need a motion to
Okay.
adjourn?
Yes, for the special meeting.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
We are adjourned at 4:15.